wasting too much time. We'd like to get started with this program. Could I now request Dr. Vinay Oman to address the gathering? Welcome.
Faculty, the students, chief guests, I welcome all of you to the 9th Annual Research Day. The Research Day is a time when we get to know the extent of research that is being conducted in our institution. I also welcome our chief guests for today, Professor Sundar and Dr. Pratap. Dr. Sundar is the founder of the Biostatistics Department in CMC. He was also the previous General Superintendent, in addition to being a Professor of Biostatistics. Dr. Pratap was Professor of Psychiatry and is the former HOD of the Department of Psychiatry. The response that we have had this year has been tremendous from the staff and students. There has been a total of about 437 submissions, both oral and as posters. There were 96 faculty oral presentations and 109 PG oral presentations. In the poster category, there were 92 faculty posters, and from the PGs and students, there were 131. So we trust this day has been an enlightening time. Yesterday and today has been an enlightening time for all concerned. Thank you once again for being here, and we look forward to an exciting evening. Thank you.
Recognize the contributions of former teachers, professors, colleagues who have helped in fostering research in CMC during the period that they were here. And following in the same pattern, this year we're going to recognize two of our former professors who have spent a lot of time and their life in improving on research, establishing actually multiple areas of research within the institution. And what I would do is to read out the citations of each of them. This will be followed by a presentation of the citation by a few invited senior faculty, and that will be followed by an oration by each of them. So the first citation that I'm going to read out is for Dr. P.S.S. Sundar. Dr. P.S.S. Sundar, former professor and head of Biostatistics Department, CMC Vellore, obtained his BSc Honours and MA degree in Statistics from Presidency College, Madras University, followed by MPH Biostatistics from the University of California, Berkeley, and PhD in Biostatistics from Columbia University, New York, USA. Incidentally, he was the first person to obtain a PhD in Biostatistics in India. Dr. Sundar joined the Christian Medical College, Vellore in 1955 as a statistician in a nutrition research project funded by William Waterman Fund. Since then, he has been actively involved in research, having assisted in planning, conduct, data management, and reporting of both clinical and epidemiological studies. His research interest was mainly in population genetics, and he realized that the consanguineous marriage in this community was about 25%. Therefore, he developed interest in studying the impact of these marriages in the offspring season and also the health challenges as these children grow. This cohort is still being followed up by the Biostatistics Department and is internationally known as the Vellore Birth Cohort Study. This cohort was funded by the National Center for Health Statistics USA over 3 decades. He also conducted studies on the prevalence and incidence of malnutrition in rural and urban school children from Vellore over 10 years. And his publications are considered as the baseline data for prevalence and incidence of malnutrition in the country. He has also worked in the area of leprosy, and his papers have shown that the burden of leprosy in Vellore district was very high, which actually attracted more research in Vellore. He also worked with the neurology department to study the prevalence of stroke within the community. Dr. Sundar founded the Biostatistics Department at CMC Vellore in 1964. He established the PhD and Masters in Biostatistics programs in 1979 and 86, respectively, affiliated with the Madras University, and these programs were the first in India. He wrote a book on fundamentals in biostatistics and research methods based on his teaching and research experience over 40 years. He has published over 150 papers in international and national journals. He has won numerous awards the latest being the Lifetime Achievement Award by the Indian Society of Medical Statistics in 2017. Dr. Sundar was also an able administrator and served as the General Superintendent and the Registrar of CMC. As the Registrar who wrote 2 methodology papers on stenine, and these papers are still referred and presented at the Supreme Court of India when hearings come up about admissions in CMC. After his retirement from CMC, he was the director of the Shefflin Leprosy Research Center for 5 years, and at present he is guiding ICMR and Mission Hospital in their research activities. I would now like to invite Dr. Jaiprakash Mulil to please come on stage, along with Dr. Anna Pulimur, our principal, and Dr. Prasad Matthews, our medical superintendent, to please come forward on stage. Sir, if you could just come forward. So for his outstanding contribution to the field of biostatistics and the Christian Medical College Vellore, Professor P.S.S. Sundar was awarded the annual Research Day Distinguished Retired Faculty Medal and Oration for the year 2018.
Thank you. One more, sir. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everybody. And first of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Biju George, the Vice Principal for Research, for inviting me. It was a great pleasure and a surprise. And I almost fainted when I got the message. And but I thought it's an honor to be here on the 9th Annual Research Day. And so he said that you could be one of the judges, but you also gave a speech for about 2 hours or something like that. So I said that's too much. So I have, he wanted me to give a brief overview of the journey of biostatistics from the time I joined in 1955 as a statistician. The general superintendent could not even spell it correctly, a statistician. He called me a statistician, and Dr. Kutumaya was the principal, and they gave me a salary of 125 rupees, which annoyed Dr. Kutumaya so much, and shouted at the general superintendent. So they made it 150. I was not bothered about the salary, but the main reason I came in here was that one of the most unique surveys ever undertaken by a premier medical college was the General Health and Nutrition Status Survey of Pennathur village. And that was the entire CMC hospital with Vaithalingam and Brand and Kutumbai, everybody participated, measured, observed, and did a lot of diet surveys of quantitative, qualitative, and this was funded by Williams Waterman Fund. As you all know who is William Waterman Protein Group. And you know, we talk about collection, analysis and interpretation. So here this great institution collected mass of information but didn't know how to analyze. So an SO was sent to Kolkata, where Dr. Harper was there, and it so happens my professor was there, and he asked him, and he called my dad, and he said, "You want to go to Vellore?" I said, "I'll go wherever you want me to go." So that's how I landed up on 14th of August 1955. And Dr. Roy Allen took me to Munjupet for a work camp, and that's how I began my life here. And my main job was to crank and calculate the protein, fat and carbohydrate requirement of hundreds of family data. And at that time there was no calculators. Of course, computers was something we cannot even imagine. So I asked my professor at that time, Dr. Koshi, can you get me at least a hand-operated calculator? He said, no, you are the calculator. I said, for me to work with paper and pencil, it will take a very, very long time. And he said, no, sorry, we can't do anything about it. And then comes Roy Allen, who later became the Rockefeller Foundation chairman, president. I told him this is the problem. I don't mind working paper, pencil and all that. I'm quite good. And but he said, how much does it cost? I said, a simple hand-operated calculator will cost about 1,000 rupees in Chennai facet. So he took 1,000 rupees out of his pocket, gave it to me, and he also gave me 20 rupees for the bus fare up and down. So I immediately went to Madras, got the calculator, came back, and I cranked. I did a lot of analysis. The fact was that the Waterman Fund stopped the grants because there was no report, as you know. So, but then within a month I got the reports and the money came flowing. That's how I began my life in that Bagayam, rural hospital, what is now the interns' quarters. That was where I sat. And there was a retired district health officer called Dr. Hanumanta Rao, who was a chain smoker of passing show cigarettes. And he sat in front of me and he was like one of those Egmore railway engines puffing away. But for nearly 3, 4, 5 years, he puffed all that smoke on me. So I disproved the theory that passive smoking is bad. Like, okay, it's like George Burns, who kept smoking cigars at the age of 100, and they interviewed and he said, you're still doing very well. Yes, my doctor told me 20 years ago that I'll be dead in 20 years. And so they said, what will the doctor say now? I don't know, he's dead now. Okay, so the question is that a lot of my classes started off almost immediately. Fortunately, the table covered my knees, which were shaking at that point of time. There were only 2 people who wore a tie at that time, Dr. K.V. Mathai and myself. And so when I took my first class for the 1954 batch of students, these were all the thugs like Good Sahai, Terence Rice and so forth. The principal was standing outside, he asked them, how was the lecture, what happened? Wonderful, sir, but we didn't understand anything. We were just admiring the lecturer and his tie and suit, and that's it. That's how started my life. Just to give you an idea that during those days, there were no computers, and the only net we had was mosquito net, and when you talk of Google, there's no Google, there's only goggles. You wear the goggles and go. And Dr. Roy Allen said, you stay where I sat. So we were using slide rules. Can you believe that all the medical students were taught how to use a slide rule to calculate, multiply, divide, and so forth. And so the statistics classes was a real, shall I say, harassment and a torture and a pain, but we did it. And one of the exercises we had was, I remember the batch very well. I remember also the students at that batch, and it was to calculate the mean age at marriage of the girls in Yedanjat village. So actually the community health collected some data, and here the students were laboriously using slide rules and calculating the mean age at marriage. And one girl, I won't mention the name, she is retired as professor of pathology, and she came out with a figure of 99.9 years. And she came and showed me the figure. And sir, I said 99.9? Yes, sir, I calculated very well. You can see my calculation. Just listen. You're telling that the girls in Edinburgh get married on the average when they are nearly 100 years old. No, sir, that's not true. I said, see, you have said 99.9. She looked at us. Oh, sorry, sir, one decimal point I missed. It was 9.99. So that was the beginnings of emphasis on arithmetic. That was the days. Statistics at that point meant analysis, and standard deviation was like fighting with the devil. Because most of the students have forgotten how to multiply squares, square roots. Impossible, can't do that. But that was the time spent in statistics. And starting from 1955, 56, 58 was the first integrated batch, and we properly started statistics. But still, the emphasis at that time was analysis. That is why a lot of students get cheesed off by statistics. Today, if I am taking a class, I will never start on the analysis. And looking at today's posters and presentations, the emphasis is more on designing and having the base for your hypothesis or estimation and how to design the study. Because analysis, today with all the computers, P.S.S, SAS and all that, is not the most difficult thing. But still, the stigma attached to statistics remains even now. So I had to bring in a lot of jokes about statistics in all my classes. And one of the jokes was what Sherlock Holmes said, that don't use statistics like a drunkard uses a lamppost. More for support than for illumination. And there was this Benjamin Disraeli who said that there are lies, damn lies, and statistics. And I added my own, in talking of today's presentation, the magic of numbers brings a suspension of common sense. And to give you a real example, during my early days, I was invited to attend an ICMR meeting at the time when Chandigarh and Pondicherry postgraduate institutes just got started. And they wanted a very significant research project. And they decided that they will work on the sleep patterns of North Indians and South Indians. So Chandigarh worked on the sleep duration in northern India, Chandigarh, Ludhiana area, and Pondicherry did on the south. And I was called in for the presentation of the findings, and the presentation, big crowd, the Director General ICMR, Dr. Tanuja and others were all there. And they said the North Indians sleep for 8.12, I don't remember the details, but about 18 decimals they gave with the standard deviation, 8.1 something. And the South Indians would sleep for 7.8967, another 17 decimals. And the difference was statistically highly significant. Now they didn't stop there. They started explaining why the North Indians sleep more than the South Indians. And they started by saying in North India they drink buffalo milk, and in South India they drink cow's milk, and cows in South India don't eat grass, they eat MGR posters and all that on the walls. So they're so weak, there's nothing in it. So the milk is so diluted and all that. Then the other thing they said was the blankets in North India is from Ludhiana, thick ones, so they can sleep nicely longer. South India, they use the D-road blanket. What is that? Nothing at all. And the third thing they said was South India, a lot of crows. Ka, 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 4 o'clock in the morning they wake up. No, the DJ said stop, stop, stop. Okay. How did you do this study? absolute silence. Did you use electrodes and EEGs and all? And no, sir, how can we afford the village? Did you give them clocks and all? No, they're all illiterate. Then what? How did you do that? Did you sit next to the person to see when he went to sleep? Sir, who will sleep, sir, if you sit next to me? So basically this went on so hilarious. Finally they said that we just asked them what time you go to bed, what time you get up. So such a crudely collected data. How many of you, when you go to bed, immediately sleep off? Very few, no? They'll start thinking tomorrow the workshop is there and I have to present the posters. And how many of you, as soon as you get up, you jump out and go? Very few. So such a crudely collected data, but beautifully analyzed. At that time, the IBM 1794 and all that, and 18 decimal points. You see the standard of research, even now ICMR is just as bad, okay? The magic of numbers brings a suspension of common sense. The whole question of statisticians and biostatisticians. So there are a lot of proverbs and others like statisticians do it with significance. Biostatisticians, they do it with power. Epidemiologists, they do it with people. And Bayesians, they do it with the posterior. So that you talked about the Bayesian hypothesis, that is one. And here was this fellow who was going in a hot air balloon. And he was hovering around and apparently he was lost. So as he was going around, he just lowered down and in a particular place, he saw a guy on the field. So he stopped and asked him, "Hey man, can you help me? Where am I?" So he looked up his compass and others and said, "You are 12 degrees Celsius and 1.2 radians and the west and void and so much of detail, and you are at this level 1300 feet and so forth." So the guy in the hot air balloon said, "Thank you very much. Are you a statistician?" He said, "Yes, I am." I said, "Why?" "Because you are so precise and so much that all your data is useless for me." So that's the statistician part. And then this guy asked him, "Are you a principal investigator?" He said, "Yeah, I am." "Oh, well, you don't know where you are? You came up there blowing hot air all over the place, and you're just asking me and I am at fault." So the principal investigators today, when we saw all the papers, were almost like they lost in the whole places. Now, till I went to California in 1962, I did not even know what is biostatistics, and I got a good grounding. And I came back and I took other subjects, and one of the subjects I took was genetics, human genetics, and Kurt Stern took it. And as you know, statistics and genetics are very closely linked in many ways. In fact, my doctoral thesis was on population genetics, and during the time this fight, Kurt Stern was taking a class of about 300 students. Somebody had put up a board outside the classroom and said that fertility can be inherited. If your parents didn't have children, the probability is that you won't have any children either. Now, that kind of statements about genetics and so forth, and there was this statistician and was so excited that his wife delivered twins. And so immediately he called up his pastor and said, "Pastor, I'm so happy to tell you that my wife will deliver twins." And the pastor said, "Very good, please bring them to church next Sunday, I will baptize them." And the statistician said, "You baptize one, I'll keep the other as control." This whole concept of control has become so important. Today I was in so many of those papers, there was no control group at all. Actually nothing at all. And there was this workshop with JP and all were so emphasizing the importance of control in here, even in a cross-sectional study, not just experimental and control. And this one workshop participant who went back home, and somebody said, "Hey Joy, how's your wife?" He said, "Compared to what?" So much thinking about that kind of a situation. Control group. I think it's very important that we look at it. And a lot of stories about statisticians that I had to build up over a period of time. And my experiences over the last, shall I say, 40, 50 years, even now, I am engaged in helping out a lot of D&D students and writing the research proposals and explaining about the concepts of control and so forth. The whole idea of research being problem solving, research having specific aims and objectives, research being of some benefit to the people you are doing. Today, if I were to take a class, I would just take an article from one of the leading journals and present it to the students and ask them to critique it and look at, and I'm amazed at the amount of statistical sense they have. It's not that it's that they don't have the arithmetic part. Statistically, they say, "Sir, the sample size is small." I said, "How do you say sample size is small?" I keep arguing with them. But you know, arguing with a statistician is like wrestling with a pig. After some time you realize the pig is enjoying it. And so, never argue with the statistician at any time. And there was a time during my period, my first PhD student was Dr. Prema Bhatt. Okay? She was doing microbiology. And whatever she wrote, Ruth Myers used to correct it in her red ink. So she was weeping all the time, and Dr. Bhatt was laughing all the time. And I had to explain why what she has done is wrong and what she cannot understand, but finally she has done it. So the question about the understanding of the research methodology, and I have written a short note for the postgraduate and other students, how to write a research protocol and what are the important aspects of it. And after all, statistics is only a tool, no? It's only a tool. And a lot of jokes apart. You know, there are two kinds of statistics, those you look up and those you make up. And the only statistics you trust are the ones you falsified yourself. So, but apart from that, people should not, the DMB Proforma has got a section on statistical design and sample size and other things. So my challenge today is to remove the mystery of statistics and research and make it easier for people to do it. So the whole question of my journey from 1955 to almost, the research committee got started off somewhere around 1968 or 69, Jacob Chandy, the principal, and so I think we should celebrate the golden jubilee of the research committee sometime. And at that time we had about 12, 13 proposals, and the principal had a real command over the whole thing. And I really remember Dr. Pulimud as a principal chairman of the research committee. He gave a grant to one of the physiology professors, I won't name it. The grant was about 500 rupees to do a clinical randomized controlled trial. And after 6 months, the report came that the person studied 2 cases. And once I mentioned what the topic is, you'll all know who it is and what it is. So I won't mention anything. It's just that she gave that test medicine to the 2 cases. One was the dog that used to visit her, and the other was the beggar who used to come and all that. And she said that's a statistical research report. There was a lot of argument, and she threw the paper at Dr. Pulimud and walked out. lot of such incidents like that. You know, a person like Dr. Marcus Devanand, he will never look at the chairman when he talks. He will cross his legs and look at his second toe and start paring the nails on that. But he's a very good researcher, you know about that. So there are a lot of people who are good researchers, and we have to accept them, we have to tolerate them, and I have learned that long time. You never looked at it. And so I thank you for this occasion, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. And I'm still fairly active. I continue to help other students and so forth. Just want to, a few statements like, I had 2 books when I started, and one was called How to Lie with Statistics by Daniel Huff. I think it's still there in the Biostat library, by Daniel Huff. And he wrote a companion volume called How to Take a Chance, and it's an entire book on probability. So there's a whole lot of sound sense. I took a lot of cartoons and material from these 2 books. But more than that, I think today a lot of editors have become so familiar with the latest statistical designs as well as analysis. So they know more about statistics than the researchers themselves. So I think we need to upgrade our level of knowledge on, it's a tool. And with all the software that is available, the computers and so forth, the concept is still quite important. And I believe that somebody said that statistics is like a slave. I agree with that. And we use it to the best possible manner to benefit somebody or the other, the researchers and so forth. So they say that one or two jokes about 2 unbiased estimators were in a bar, and one asked him the other, hey, how do you like being married? And he said, it's okay, but you lose a degree. And there was a statistician in jail who had 0 degrees of freedom. And so basically there are a lot of these jokes that you should learn. Those of you who are teaching research and statistics, I think it kind of excites the students to look at some of these stories and so forth. I can go on telling a lot more stories. Thank you very much.